Here we explore everything from science to lived experience, all with curiosity, compassion, and a deep belief in healing. If you find this episode helpful, please take a moment to like, comment, subscribe, and share. It helps us grow this community and reach others who may feel alone in their journey. Today, we're diving into something that's making waves in the world of psychiatry, something that might just change the way we think about mental illness entirely. It's called the Keto Cure, and no, it's not just about weight loss or a food trend. We're talking about using food, specifically a medical ketogenic diet, as a treatment for some of the most serious mental health conditions like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, and more. Sounds surprising? Stay with us because this story is full of science, healing, and real-life transformations. Let's begin with a big idea that might flip everything you thought you knew about mental illness. Recent studies have found that for some people with serious psychiatric conditions, changing how they eat, particularly following a ketogenic diet, has led to dramatic improvements. In one study, 31 individuals with severe mental illnesses, including schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and major depression, were introduced to a structured medical keto diet. Here's what's astonishing. 28 of them stuck with it, and out of those, every single one saw improvement in their symptoms. Even more jaw-dropping, nearly half of them, 43%, actually experienced full remission. Can you imagine going from constant symptoms to remission, all from a shift in metabolic treatment? Let's unpack how this is even possible. But before we dive into the science, let's ground this in something deeply personal. The stories of real people who've experienced this firsthand. Let me tell you about Kirsten. She's a therapist who, for over a year, was tormented by relentless migraines that didn't respond to any treatment. She tried everything: medications, chiropractors, physical therapy, and doctors of every kind. Nothing helped. Eventually, she saw a specialist who suggested something she didn't expect: a medical ketogenic diet. First, it seemed unrelated. Why would a diet for epilepsy help with migraines? But here's where it gets fascinating. The ketogenic diet has been used for nearly a century to treat children with drug-resistant epilepsy. Why? Because it triggers a metabolic state called ketosis, where the body produces ketones, natural molecules that stabilize the brain's electrical activity and reduce seizures. Could it be that these same ketones might help with other brain-based conditions too? That's exactly what researchers are beginning to explore. Let's take a step back and talk about what the ketogenic diet really is, especially in this medical context. This isn't your everyday cut carbs to lose weight kind of diet. The medical ketogenic diet is a very specific, carefully monitored way of eating. It's high in fat, about 80 to 90% of your calories, moderate in protein, and very low in carbohydrates. But here's the twist. It's not about starving yourself. It's about switching your body's fuel source. Normally, we burn sugar, glucose, for energy. But on a ketogenic diet, the body starts burning fat instead. And as a result, it produces ketones, which become the new fuel for your brain. This shift can profoundly impact the way your brain functions, especially if your brain's normal energy systems aren't working properly due to metabolic dysfunction. Sounds like more than a diet, doesn't it? That's because it is. Let's meet someone else whose life changed completely because of this approach. Now let me introduce you to Lauren Kennedy West, a powerful mental health advocate and YouTuber behind the channel Living Well with Schizophrenia. Lauren lives with schizoaffective disorder, a challenging diagnosis that blends the symptoms of schizophrenia, like hallucinations and paranoia, with the intense mood swings of bipolar disorder. For years, she managed it with therapy and medication, but despite doing everything right, she continued to experience breakthrough symptoms, both the distressing positive symptoms like delusions, and the negative ones like emotional flatness, fatigue, and lack of motivation. In late 2023, she decided to try metabolic therapy, specifically the medical ketogenic diet. Her regular mental health providers didn't know much about it, so she worked with a specialized keto coach trained in nutrition and mental health. She wasn't sure what to expect. Could simply changing her food really change her brain? But within months, the results spoke for themselves. Her symptoms began to vanish, not just a little, but entirely. She started to feel more alive, more stable, more like herself than she had in years. And eventually, with medical supervision, She began tapering off her psychiatric medication. Today, she's completely medication-free and thriving. She's documented this entire journey on her channel, which is now called Living Well After Schizophrenia. Her transformation is as inspiring as it is hopeful. So how is all of this possible? According to Dr. Chris Palmer, a psychiatrist at Harvard Medical School and author of the book Brain Energy, this shift isn't just a fluke. He believes that many of the conditions we call mental illnesses are actually metabolic disorders of the brain. If the cells in your brain can't properly produce or use energy, the result could be symptoms like depression, mania, paranoia, memory loss, or even psychosis. By using treatments that target the brain's metabolism, like keto, sleep, exercise, and fasting, we might be able to restore normal brain function and, in some cases, reverse mental illness. That's not just exciting, it's empowering. It gives us new options beyond just medication. Research supports this metabolic theory. Ketones, those molecules produced on the ketogenic diet, are known to improve mitochondrial function. That's your cell's energy center. Reduce oxidative stress, which damages brain cells. Protect and heal neurons. Balance key neurotransmitters like GABA. Stabilize blood sugar, which helps with mood regulation. And beyond mental illness, the keto diet is being studied for Alzheimer's disease, PTSD, alcohol use disorder, and even eating disorders. We're just beginning to scratch the surface of what's possible when we support the brain with metabolic health. Now let's address the honest truth. This approach is not for everyone. The keto diet can be hard. It takes time, money, energy, and discipline. It requires cutting out many familiar foods. Social situations can be tricky, and some people may struggle to get enough nutrients or fiber, especially early on. But for those dealing with debilitating depression, psychosis, or chronic migraines, it may feel like a small price to pay. As Lauren said, it's easier to stick with a keto diet than it is to live with suicidal depression. Food becomes more than just nourishment. It becomes a lifeline. So, do you have to stay on keto forever? Not necessarily. Just like epilepsy, many people may only need to follow keto for a few years. Once the brain stabilizes, they may be able to transition to something more sustainable, like a Mediterranean or paleo-style diet, while keeping the mental health benefits. And for those who choose or need to stay on keto long-term, many do it successfully, even for decades. Why? Because the benefits are worth it. It's not about willpower. It's about choosing life, choosing clarity, choosing healing. We're still learning. There's a lot of research yet to be done. And no, this isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. But what this approach offers is hope. Hope for people who've tried everything else. Hope that your brain isn't broken. Hope that there are more tools in the toolbox than you've been told. If you're considering trying the keto diet as a mental health treatment, please do it with professional guidance. Find a psychiatrist, a doctor, or a registered nutritionist who understands metabolic therapies. It's not something to try alone, because healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens with support, knowledge, and care. Thank you for tuning into Bipolar Talks, your mindful, compassionate space for mental health conversations that matter. If you felt something shift during this episode, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing it. You never know whose life it might change. And remember, no matter where you are in your journey, you are not alone. There is hope, there is healing, and your story is still unfolding. Disclaimer: this podcast episode is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for medical advice or treatment. Always speak with a licensed healthcare provider, psychiatrist, or therapist before making any changes to your mental health treatment, especially dietary changes like starting a ketogenic diet.